I had become a Christian about a decade ago, but somehow, in some way, I knew deep inside that I had been called to serve God. But like Jonah and like many of us, I was stalling, I was reluctant, and I chose to serve God on my own terms. I got into a business, a real estate development company, where we built and sold condos, subdivisions, townhouses all over the Philippines. I got to travel and I got to go around. And as a young man, I became elevated to VP of Sales and Marketing. And I remember we would sell a lot of units, we would make a lot of money on the commissions and all of those other things. And slowly, I realized that on the inside, as I was doing my work, I was working so hard to gain a lot of money. The reputation slowly crept in, and my pride was being built. I was, as Pastor Peter said, I was working on money, making a mansion, and hopefully someday a Mercedes, the three M's. And while all of this, serving God on the side. But deep within, I knew that I was conflicted. I was distracted, and I was living a dualistic lifestyle. I was compromising and going against God and His call on my own life. And so it all took a downward turn when God had to humble me and break me from all that I had built. One day, I was asked to leave our company, our own company, and all of my receivables were put on hold. The money that I had saved up for all of my time working there, after leaving the company, I had slowly spent it all. And I wound up worse with credit debt. From closing millions worth of units in a day to making zero money for a matter of about 8 months and zero in my bank account after being broken by God. And so, in that darkest time of my life, in the deepest depths of that season, one day, I got in touch with my pastor, my discipler, Pastor Albert. And as we were going to lunch, he asked me to pray actually about considering going into full-time ministry. And that got my attention once again. I remembered how God deep inside, years ago, had called me to serve Him. And yet, I did it my own way. A couple of days later, Peter Jr. and Paul Tanchi asked me to go to lunch, and lo and behold, it was the same thing. They asked me to discern God's will and to actually really pray and seek Him to serve God. It wasn't after a few days later that I had an interview with Pastor Peter, Pastor Ricky, and Pastor JP, and they were all, seeking answers, praying, and interviewing me if this was really the call of God upon my life. So, simply put, I asked God for 3 requests. In my brokenness, I said to God, Lord, if you really want me to do this, if you really want me to go into full-time ministry to serve you, then Lord, number 1, please allow my parents to bless this so that I could honor them. And number 2, that I would get out of debt and that you, O Lord, will provide for my needs. And number 3, since I was getting to know someone, that I would get married, that I would have a helpmate to serve alongside with as I fulfill God's call upon my life. Lo and behold, after a few very tough times, weeks and months of praying, my dad gave his blessing along with my mom to go into full-time ministry. They said, if that is your passion, son, that is your purpose, then go ahead and do that. So number 1, check. Number 2, I was more worried about the debt and the provision because all of my receivables, my commissions were on hold. So I asked God, Lord, please be the one to provide. I'm in debt. I don't know how to spend anything. I can't spend for my needs. And so my dad even gave an opportunity to talk and mediate between me and the partners of my previous company. And in one day, we were able to resolve all of the issues and my receivables were released. And so, all of my debt was paid and I got the second confirmation for God's provision. The third was the helpmate. So after that, I got the go signal from my parents and my now wife's parents to get married. And so I bought a ring and I proposed. And third, helpmate, check. Triple times, confirmed. This is our God who works in our brokenness. And I can never forget that day when I said yes to God, because I can still remember although it was a year or so ago. I was coming from a client meeting, a client viewing, because I was a real estate broker. Remember, for 8 months, I did not have any sales at all, zero. So as we went through the viewing of this condo unit, after that, I go to the mall and I call my pastor and I say to him, Pastor, I think this is really God's will for my life, to serve and go full time. And so after I gave my yes to my pastors, and most importantly to God, that is when I got a call from my client. And they called me and said, Mike, we are going to buy the condo and do the paperwork. And so that was the day that I realized that as I said yes to God, as I gave my life to Him fully, following His will and call, that He would provide, that He would actually be faithful to see us through, even when we are broken, even when we are down. God truly is an amazing God. He broke me before He could use me. And now I stand here before you, more than a year later, happily, joyfully serving the Lord in CCF, blissfully married by my wife, Yvette. She's helping me out in ministry, and still being broken by God in the process. To God be all the glory and praise.